Growing up in sunny Burbank, California, Tim Burton often felt out of place, finding comfort and solitude at a cemetery at the end of his street, since it was a lonely and emotional place where no one would bother you. It became a quiet refuge where he could think undisturbed by himself, nurturing an early fascination with the macabre that would later define his unique Gothic style. Burton created the character of Edward Scissorhands to reflect his own feelings of isolation, with the image of a man with scissors for hands symbolizing the pain of wanting to connect with others but being unable to do so without causing harm. Rigor mortis stiffens the muscles after death, but once it wears off, limbs can twitch or shift due to muscle relaxation or gas buildup. These movements can be so startling that morticians have reported bodies appearing to sit up, raise their arms, or even turn their heads. In 1957, 22-year-old rock star Jerry Lee Lewis married his teenage first cousin Myra Gale Brown in Mississippi. At the time, Lewis had still been married to another woman, while Myra Gale was only 13 years old and still believed in Santa Claus. After riding a big wave of success with hits like Great Balls of Fire, the scandalous marriage effectively destroyed Lewis's career. Hulk Hogan was once a towering 6 foot 7 inches, but has lost up to 5 inches of his height due to his back being fused together after decades of punishing his body in the wrestling ring. Over the past decade alone, he's undergone at least 25 surgeries, including 10 on his back, as well as replacements of both knees and hips and operations on his shoulders and neck. Accordingly, Hogan has described feeling like a human medical experiment and now suffers from brutal chronic pain. About 10,000 Facebook users die every day. It's estimated that by the year 2070, the number of dead profiles will outnumber the living ones, and Facebook will become a digital graveyard. Reclusive siblings Homer and Langley Collier lived in a Harlem townhouse and became notorious for their extreme hoarding. After Homer went blind in the 1930s, Langley quit his job to care for him and began compulsively collecting newspapers and junk, believing that Homer would one day get his sight back and need to catch up on the news. They booby-trapped their home with tunnels of debris to keep people out, eventually withdrawing completely from society. In March of 1947, police discovered Homer's body dead from starvation. Langley had died before him but wasn't found until weeks later due to all the junk in the home. He'd been crushed to death by one of his own traps while trying to bring food to his brother. Just last week, 19-year-old Serbian model Tajana Radonjic met a horrifying end during what was supposed to be a scenic parasailing shoot off the coast of Montenegro. Suspended 150 feet in the air above the Adriatic Sea, Tajana began to scream, "Put me down," in terror. Then, in a chilling act, she unbuckled her own harness while still in the air and released herself. Onlookers watched helplessly as her body plunged into the ocean below, likely dying immediately. She had received training just minutes before and showed no obvious signs of distress, making her decision to remove the harness all the more disturbing. Many have speculated that she suffered a sudden panic attack and attempted to ground herself while being disassociated from reality. Her body was recovered from the sea hours later, and parts of the incident were caught on video. Her family has disputed the claim that she panicked or acted irrationally, raising questions about the safety of the harness or if she was given improper instructions. In 1982, renowned actor Vic Morrow and child actors Micah Dinley and Renee Chen were killed on the set of Twilight Zone the movie when a helicopter malfunctioned and crashed during a stunt, decapitating both Morrow and Micah while crushing Renee. The scene involved illegal child labor in unsafe conditions, sparking a high-profile trial against director John Landis, who was ultimately acquitted. The haunting photo on the right shows 7-year-old Renee's grandfather collapsing in grief at her funeral, questioning how this could have possibly happened to his talented young granddaughter. The 1897 Battle of Sarigari is considered to be one of the greatest final stands in history. Just 21 soldiers of the Sikh regiment fought an army of 10,000 Afghans and killed more than 600 of them before being defeated. In Florida, 75-year-old exotic animal enthusiast Marvin Hajos was fatally mauled by his pet cassowary, one of the most dangerous birds on the planet. Authorities believe he tripped and fell near the bird, triggering an aggressive response. The cassowary lashed out with its powerful legs, using its razor-sharp inner claws to slash Marvin's neck and torso apart. The man who had raised exotic animals for decades died en route to the hospital. In 2015, Selena Gomez was diagnosed with lupus, an autoimmune disease that began attacking her kidneys and led to life-threatening complications. By 2017, her condition had worsened to the point where she required a kidney transplant to survive. Her close friend Francia Raisa volunteered to donate one without Selena even asking, and while the transplant initially appeared to be successful, Gomez suffered a serious complication when the new kidney twisted inside her body, cutting off blood flow. Doctors had to perform emergency surgery, using a vein from her leg to construct a new artery to save the organ. The experience left her with lasting physical and emotional scars, and although it deepened her bond with Raisa at the time, their relationship later became strained, reportedly because of Selena's drinking habits following the surgery, which Raisa felt was disrespectful to her and even dangerous, considering the seriousness of the surgery and the need to protect the donated organ. Known for his roles in Weird Science, Titanic, and Twister, in 2017, actor Bill Paxton underwent heart surgery to repair an aortic aneurysm and replace a valve, a procedure that his family later claimed was high-risk, unconventional, and perhaps not even necessary. The surgeon, Dr. Ali Koinazad, had allegedly been warned by the hospital for his poor judgment in past cases, but he still performed the operation. According to the lawsuit, Paxton was never properly informed of the risks involved or the surgeon's history. In the days following the procedure, Paxton initially appeared to be recovering well and even spoke with his family. But without proper monitoring, and with the surgeon having left the hospital, complications soon arose, including internal bleeding, cardiac instability, and worsening organ function. Despite his declining condition, no adequate care was administered in time. Paxton ultimately suffered a massive stroke and died shortly afterwards, in what his family described as a preventable cascade of medical negligence. In February of 1978, 23-year-old college student Stephen Kubacki totally vanished while cross-country skiing near Lake Michigan. His skis, poles, and backpack were found near the lake, and his footprints led onto the ice before abruptly ending, leading authorities to believe he had fallen through and drowned. But 15 months later, in May of 1979, Kubacki reappeared in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, approximately 700 miles away from where he vanished. He claimed to have no memory of the intervening time, stating he woke up in a field wearing unfamiliar clothes and carrying a backpack with maps and other items he didn't recognize. Kubacki never spoke publicly again, and the bizarre case remains unsolved. In 1559, King Henry II of France held a grand jousting tournament to celebrate his daughter's marriage, despite ominous warnings, including a prophecy that he would be pierced through the eye. During the friendly match, a lance splintered on impact, driving a wooden shard through Henry's eye and deep into his brain. Though initially conscious, he soon suffered excruciating pain, seizures, and neurological decline over 10 agonizing days before dying. His gruesome death shocked all of Europe and led to the downfall of jousting in France. In 1951, Mary Reeser was found almost entirely burnt to ashes in her armchair, with only her lower leg, backbone, and shrunken skull still remaining, while the rest of her Florida apartment showed very little fire damage. Though many speculated that it was a case of spontaneous human combustion, experts believe that she accidentally ignited herself while smoking and burned under a rare phenomenon known as the wick effect, where her clothing caught fire and her body fat acted like a human candle, fueling a slow, smoldering blaze that consumed her from within. To this day, the case remains one of the most chilling fire deaths ever recorded. In 1761, a French ship carrying 160 Malaysian slaves crashed into the barren Tromelin island, resulting in 100 of them drowning while shackled below deck. The surviving 60 slaves were forced to build a raft for the fleeing French crew, who promised they'd return but never did. Stranded on a small desolate sandbar with no trees, no fresh water, and no hope, the abandoned slaves endured 15 harrowing years. They scavenged shipwrecked debris for crude shelter and tools, drank rainwater when it fell, hunted seabirds and turtles to stave off starvation, and managed to keep a fire burning despite there being no trees on the island. When rescue finally arrived in 1776, the island held only 7 emaciated women and a single infant. While filming in Atlanta in 2023, Jamie Foxx suffered a sudden life-threatening stroke brought on by a brain bleed. The exact cause was never publicly revealed, fueling widespread speculation. Foxx blacked out for 20 days and required emergency brain surgery to save his life. When he finally woke up in a wheelchair, unable to walk or speak, doctors warned him this will be the toughest year of your life. Foxx later described seeing a terrifying hot tunnel and admitted he came within inches of death. He had to relearn basic functions and now calls the experience a brutal reminder of life's fragility. In 2010, 24-year-old Australian woman Phoebe Hanjuk was found dead at the bottom of a trash compactor after somehow plunging feet first down a narrow 12th-floor garbage chute. Experts argued the act would have been virtually impossible without assistance, yet her death was ruled accidental and no one was charged. In 2010, a woman tried to smuggle a live, drugged-up tiger cub through a Bangkok airport, hidden inside her checked suitcase among several plush toy tigers. Security only discovered it when an x-ray revealed bones and a tiny beating heart among the pile of lifeless toys. The cub, barely hanging on to life, was rescued and later rehabilitated by a wildlife protection center. Gary Coleman became a massive star as a child on different strokes, earning him millions, but his parents and business advisor embezzled most of his fortune over the years. Once he turned 18, he sued them and won a measly $1.3 million settlement, by which point his career had faded and the medical bills were racking up. As an adult, Coleman struggled financially and battled constant health issues from congenital kidney disease, the condition that resulted in his 4'8" height due to the medications used to treat it when he was a child. His final years were marked by bitterness toward Hollywood and especially his parents. He once said, "If I had the choice, I wouldn't be famous. I'd be a happy, healthy, regular guy." When he suffered a fatal brain hemorrhage after a bad fall in 2010, Coleman had written in his will that he wanted no funeral, no wake, and that his parents should not be informed about or allowed to attend any memorial services held in his honor. In 2008, Mark Ruffalo's younger brother Scott, a well-known Beverly Hills hairstylist, was found slumped on his bathroom floor with a single execution-style gunshot wound to the back of his head. He died a week later as police called it a targeted killing and questioned two individuals who were ultimately not charged. Today, Scott's death still remains an unsolved Hollywood mystery, a wound his older brother Mark still carries. Mark later said, "You never get over it, you just get used to it." In 2008, a 7-year-old boy from India named Akrid Jaswal performed life-changing surgery on a poor village girl whose fingers had been fused together from severe burns. Her family couldn't afford proper medical care, so in desperation they turned to Akrid, a child prodigy who had taught himself medicine by reading textbooks at age 5. Despite no formal training, Akrid successfully separated her fingers, restoring the use of her hand. He later entered college at age 12 and now works as a medical researcher driven by his mission to cure cancer. In 1991, Eric Clapton's 4-year-old son Connor was visiting his mother's apartment in a New York City skyscraper. The building was undergoing maintenance, and a janitor left a window open without a safety guard on the 53rd floor. While playing, Connor ran toward the window, which was floor to ceiling, and fell 49 stories to his death. Despite the negligence, no criminal charges were filed against the worker responsible. At the time, Eric had just begun to build a relationship with Connor after years of struggling with addiction. Completely devastated, Clapton channeled his grief into writing Tears of Heaven, one of his most popular songs to this day. In 2018, a man was riding an escalator in a New York City subway station when his oversized sweatshirt suddenly became caught in the machinery. As the escalator continued moving, the fabric began to tighten around his neck. By the time help had reached him, he'd already been strangled to death by his own clothing. In 2018, Brad Lewis leaped from a 13-foot-high balcony to grab his 2-year-old son who had fallen while chasing a toy. Lewis cradled the boy midair, taking the full impact on solid concrete. He suffered a fractured skull, brain injuries, and a broken vertebrae, while his son survived with only minor injuries. Before becoming one of boxing's most infamous promoters, Don King was no stranger to violence. In 1954, he shot and killed a man who was allegedly trying to rob one of King's gambling operations. The killing was ruled self-defense, and King walked free. But in 1966, he was involved in a far more brutal incident, stomping a man to death over a $600 gambling debt. He was convicted of manslaughter and served only 4 years in prison. After his release, King quickly climbed the ranks of the pro boxing world, building a multi-million-dollar empire despite the bodies he left behind. In 2001, an elderly Japanese man named Tatsuo Osako passed away quietly at the age of 88. It wasn't until after his death that people discovered he had helped over 2,000 Jewish refugees escape Nazi persecution during World War II by quietly stamping their travel documents and sheep-herding them onto ships bound for safety. He never spoke of his actions, kept no accolades, and lived a modest life as a travel agent. His family only found out that he'd secretly saved thousands of lives after discovering old photos and records that were tucked away in his home. Mark Hoffman was a skilled forger who gained notoriety in 1980s Utah by selling fake historical documents, many of which targeted early Mormon history. His most infamous creation, the Salamander Letter, falsely claimed that Joseph Smith's divine revelations involved a magical salamander, casting the origins of the Latter-day Saints Church in a bizarre and controversial light. Hoffman sold these forgeries for tens of thousands of dollars, duping collectors, historians, and even high-ranking church officials. But as demand grew, he began accepting payments for documents he hadn't yet forged, falling deep into debt. When clients started questioning delays in authenticity, Hoffman resorted to violence, killing 2 people with homemade bombs before accidentally injuring himself while attempting to plant a third. Although mangled, he survived and later pled guilty to murder and fraud. Now 70 years old, he's been in prison since 1987 and will likely remain there for the rest of his life. Before launching Punk'd, Ashton Kutcher was developing a much darker hidden camera show called Harassment. In 2002, one of its earliest pranks involved staging a gruesome fake murder scene inside a Las Vegas hotel room, complete with a very realistic, bloody, lifeless corpse. Two unsuspecting guests walked in, believed they had discovered a real dead body, and were left completely traumatized. The stunt triggered a $10 million lawsuit against Kutcher, MTV, and the hotel, forcing the network to shut down the show before even airing a single episode. The backlash was so severe that Harassment was scrapped entirely, leading to the creation of the far tamer celebrity prank show Punk'd. In 2007, a Massachusetts state employee named Michael Fiola was nearly sent to prison after countless files of child porn were discovered on his work-issued laptop. He was immediately fired and charged, facing years behind bars, until forensic experts discovered that the device had actually been infected with a virus that automatically visited up to 40 CP sites per minute, even when he was nowhere near it. The activity was so extreme and constant that it proved impossible for a human to replicate, ultimately clearing Fiola's name. Though the charges were dropped, Michael and his wife spent nearly $250,000 defending him from an awful crime he never committed. Decades of intense drumming took a brutal toll on Phil Collins' body, causing such severe nerve damage that he could no longer hold onto drumsticks. After spinal surgery in 2009, Collins lost much of the feeling in his hands and was forced to give up drumming entirely. The loss devastated him to the point where he contemplated taking his own life. In 1974, Stanford student Arliss Perry was found murdered in a campus chapel, posed kneeling at the altar with a candle stuck inside her body in what appeared to be a ritualistic killing. The case went cold for decades until in 2018, DNA linked it to a campus security guard who took his own life as police attempted to arrest him. In 2021, during a wedding ceremony in Uttar Pradesh, India, a bride named Sarabi collapsed from a heart attack and was pronounced dead shortly afterwards. But instead of canceling the expensive event, both families agreed to continue the wedding by marrying the groom to Sarabi's younger sister, Nisha. The ceremony went on while Sarabi's body was placed in another room in the house. The incident shocked many and was confirmed by local news and relatives, who watched in total disbelief as a wedding and funeral unfolded under the same roof. Coach Tyler Wall was a 38-year-old fitness mentor who played a central role in MrBeast's recent video, Lose 100 Pounds, Win $250,000, where he trained contestant Maj in a grueling months-long weight loss journey. Tyler provided constant support physically and emotionally as Maj fought to shed over 100 pounds. But tragically, midway through filming, Coach Wall was found dead in his Greenville, North Carolina apartment on February 18, 2025. His death was described as sudden and unexpected, with no official cause publicly disclosed. Completely devastated, the MrBeast team gave Maj the choice to stop the challenge, but he chose to continue in honor of his late coach. Maj ultimately completed the drastic transformation, dropping from 324 pounds to 222, achieving the goal he and his coach set out to reach together. Despite initial hesitation, the MrBeast team chose to release the video with a tribute honoring Tyler's impact, ending with the words, "In loving memory of Coach Tyler Wall." Dr. Fauci's NIH division, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, funded a series of horrific experiments on beagle puppies between 2016 and 2020. One of the most graphic studies involved dogs placed in mesh cages while sandflies were allowed to bite and feed on their heads, allegedly to study how certain parasites are transmitted in hopes of improving treatments for parasitic infections affecting humans. Some dogs were reportedly devocalized to prevent barking and were euthanized at the end of the studies. While Fauci wasn't personally conducting the tests, his agency approved the funding of about $375,000 for the research. Critics, including lawmakers and animal rights groups, condemned the studies as unnecessarily cruel and accused the NIH of lacking transparency and ethical oversight in approving such horrific procedures. The incident sparked widespread outrage online, with many calling for Dr. Fauci to be held responsible for the funding decisions made under his leadership. Known online as Pioneers Productions, Randy Stair became obsessed with the cartoon Danny Phantom and was convinced that he'd be reincarnated as a character on the show named Ember. While working a night shift at a grocery store in Pennsylvania, he blocked all the exits, pulled out 2 shotguns, and murdered 3 coworkers before turning the gun on himself in the frozen foods aisle. Police later uncovered a trove of videos and writings outlining his delusions and plans, in which he explained his belief that these murders would allow him to cross over into the animated world of Danny Phantom. During a morning broadcast in 1974, Florida news reporter Christine Chubbuck calmly announced, "In keeping with Channel 40's policy of bringing you the latest in blood and guts, you're going to see another first, attempted suicide." She then proceeded to take her own life on live TV. Many viewers, and even people in the control room, assumed it was a scripted segment or a special effects stunt. Christine had reportedly long struggled with depression, loneliness, and frustration over the channel's focus on violent topics and sensationalism. Her death completely shocked the nation and remains one of the most disturbing moments in broadcast history. In the months leading up to his death, actor and comedian Chris Farley was visibly deteriorating, sweating profusely, coughing up blood, and often unable to walk without assistance. His appearances on SNL and late-night shows became increasingly erratic as producers began to fear he might die right on set. On December 18, 1997, he was found face down in his Chicago apartment wearing only a shirt after several days of binging on alcohol and hard drugs. The last person to see him alive was a sex worker he had hired named Heidi Hauser. As she was leaving, Farley reportedly followed her down the hall while begging her, "Don't leave me, please don't leave me," which were likely his final words. The cause of death was a speedball overdose, a lethal mix of cocaine and morphine. Eerily, Farley idolized John Belushi and always said he wanted to be just like him, even saying in sketches, "I'll probably go out like Belushi." Both comedians died of speedball overdoses at the young age of 33. In 2020, Tim Bleefnick appeared on Family Feud and joked that the biggest mistake he made at his wedding was saying "I do."
What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding? Honey, I love you, but said I do. Not my mistake. Not my mistake. I love my wife.
But 3 years later, in February of 2023, his estranged wife Rebecca Bleefnick was found shot 14 times in their home while their 3 young boys were upstairs. The couple had apparently been going through a bitter divorce, and Tim went to the extreme to deal with it. He was arrested, convicted of first-degree murder, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When 36-year-old Heather McManamy was diagnosed with terminal cancer, she began writing dozens of greeting cards for her young daughter to open in the years after she was gone, covering birthdays, graduations, heartbreaks, and even her wedding day. Each card was filled with love, jokes, and advice, allowing her daughter to still receive words of comfort and celebration long after Heather's death in 2015. It was her way of staying present for every milestone she knew she wouldn't live